thank you so much, Luciana, for your help and everyone for joining. I'm very excited and also a little nervous about this technology, but overall grateful to be able to go ahead despite the situation. So first thing, a big welcome. And I do encourage you, if you feel comfortable, to turn on your webcam. It's wonderful to be able to see people's expressions and to be able to see each other. So I'm having a bad hair day, so don't worry about it. But if very informal, please, if you feel comfortable, I would love for you to turn on your camera so I can see you. And let's just practice using the chat box to start with. Just one thing that you're feeling grateful for this morning, or it's morning for me, I'm in Florida. I know you're from all around. So just either where you're joining us from today and or one thing you're feeling grateful for. So let's get comfortable. That'll be a quick introduction. These workshops were originally scheduled for 90 minutes and down to 60. So go ahead. Okay. I'm seeing some familiar names. Great to see you, Clement. Scott. Excellent. Everyone seeing the chat pop up? Wow. Fantastic. So I will give it maybe another 30 seconds. I have a dog too in my house, and I'm hoping that he doesn't start barking in the middle of the webinar. The joys of doing everything from home. Yeah, very grateful to be able to do this. Would have much rather been able to give you a big hug at the start of this, but we'll do that virtually. Perfect. Okay, so again, big welcome everyone. We will use the chat room. We'll do breakout rooms. So I've tried to maximize some of the interactive features that we have available to us over Zoom. So, first thing, I just wanted to start off by saying, you know, why am I hosting a session on appreciative inquiry? So I've been for the last 14 years at the University for Peace in Costa Rica. And about 10 years ago, we had a big conflict in actually the peace education department. It was a complex conflict. I got to know about it well. And then I heard that one of our visiting faculty did an appreciative inquiry process with the group, and it really transformed the conflict, brought the group closer than ever before. And so I got very curious, what is appreciative inquiry? A lot of it is online, open source, so I did my research. And then I thought, you know, I really want to get better at using this. Now I know what it is, the power of it. And maybe 2 months after I had started this process of really thinking about appreciative inquiry, I was, believe it or not, one evening in Costa Rica at a reception. And I was talking to the gentleman at this reception on the table, and his name is David. And I said, oh, you know, and he gave me his business card. And the last name is Cooper Ryder. And I'm like, you're David Cooper Ryder. And he smiled. He said, yeah, you know, he didn't think anyone in Costa Rica would recognize him. He and a colleague of his, their research led to appreciative inquiry. So I had just run in to my kind of hero at the time. And so one thing led to another, and I was able to go to Case Western University and certify in the process. And the reason I share this story is I've included appreciative inquiry in all the work I do now at the University for Peace. I think it resonates from conflict resolution to working in the field of social innovation. But the other thing is that when you focus on something, one of the tenets of appreciative inquiry is that when you focus on something, it actually grows and it somehow enters your life. And so that's the way I got to appreciative inquiry. I had such a focus on it that I somehow ended up, and this was also a bit of luck, sitting on the same table as the person who had come up with it. He was in Costa Rica facilitating a process. So it is very powerful and sometimes even a little magical. So let me start with the source of the words. So there's an adjective, which is to appreciate, right? And appreciate is to value, the act of recognizing the best of. So that's the adjective. But the real substance of it is in the inquiry. That's the verb, right? So the appreciate qualifies the action, the inquiry. And inquiry, beautiful word, it's the act of exploration and discovery, the asking of questions, to be open to seeing new potentials and possibilities. Yeah, I'm seeing a question. Okay, it's about slides being shared. I'm certainly more than happy to share all these slides. So when these two things come together, it's the way we're inquiring with this appreciative eye, with this appreciative lens. And that really is what I've experienced transformational in its impact on people and processes. So what I want to do in the 52 minutes we have together is I want to start off by sharing you a little background about appreciative inquiry and the principles behind it, and then let's practice. Okay, let's kind of try to take advantage of our time together to interact and practice using some of these principles. By the way, I do think of these things as long-term relationships. At the end, I'll invite any one of you to kind of continue to stay in touch. I love this stuff. I'm limited to an hour. I'll do my best in the time I have. So the 5 principles of appreciative inquiry that I'll share with you. The first one is called the Constructionist Principle, a belief that the words we use don't just describe our world, they actually create the world that we live in. So does anyone see a pink elephant on this slide? Do you see a pink elephant? Okay, you don't see a pink elephant, but the fact that I've said pink elephant created an image of a pink elephant, and then you looked for it, right? So that's a very trivial example, but our words actually create our reality, and we'll continue to explore that idea. We think of ourselves sometimes as being objective. Wonderful behavioral economist called Dan Ariely talks about how we're predictably irrational. And a lot of this is around the words we use. Second principle, the positive principle. Focusing on the positive causes it to grow and brings out the best in people and organizations. So we're going to try I want to illustrate this slightly differently than the last one. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to just respond fairly quickly with the first thing that comes to you. We'll do this in the text box. What is your superpower? We all have one or more superpowers. Sometimes we're not even aware of them. It might be as simple as, when someone comes to me with a problem, I just feel like I can listen so intently and make them feel better, whatever it is. So what is your superpower? As you reflect on it, it's going to grow. As you share it with others, it's growing. So let's take a minute to think. Well, we need space to really connect with our superpowers and bring it to all the challenges that are available to us. I'll give it maybe another 45 seconds. I should have brought I have a coffee mug that says, "What's your superpower?" From the University for Peace. So I'm a fan of this question, and I think about it for myself. I have a couple of kids, and I ask them, and I reiterate to them what their powers are, what their superpowers are. And again, the idea of, what we focus on, and when we focus on the positive, it allows us to see it in ourselves and really allows that to emerge and grow even further. So thank you, all of you. I love the daydreaming, so important to our creative process. So again, I'm trying to do a few things. So sorry, I'm not going to be able to respond to everyone's messages, but I hope you're also being able to see each other's superpowers. Thank you. So the anticipatory principle is the third principle. Images of the future affect the way we behave in the present. Images of the future affect the way we behave in the present. So much interesting research done in this area. When they talk to top performing athletes, they say that, they visualize themselves succeeding, winning, whatever, beating the world record. So they do it twice. They first do it in their heads and then they do it in person. So the images of our own achievements, capabilities, transformations affect what our bodies and our physiology. The one research that I wanted to share with you, because it is so widely known now, part of David Cooperrider's research was in the Cleveland Clinic, and he looked at patients' recovery rates. And some of the research was also on the placebo effect, right? And so the placebo effect is the idea that if patients, and this has been clinically tested, patients who get a sugar pill, but don't know that it's a sugar pill, think that they're getting an active ingredient, their bodies actually start producing exactly what the medicine would have launched. So the power of their brain thinking, oh, I've been given something that's going to make me feel better, actually has a physiological effect. And again, it's funny that we need all this research to prove something we all know, right? Like if you're really anticipating meeting a friend, your best friend, childhood friend who you haven't seen for 2 years, you feel physiologically, you feel different. So it's this idea that our brains and bodies are connected. And so when we start anticipating positive images in the future, physiologically that starts creating changes. And so that's also part of the power of appreciative inquiry in taking this understanding that comes from the field of positive psychology and then putting it into practice. Fourth principle, the poetic principle. Individuals and organizations are in a state of constant change versus changing from a particular state to another state. And I love this. You know, people are talking about pre-coronavirus and post-coronavirus. No, you know, every day is different. We're evolving, we're changing organizationally, personally, and it's not from like one state to another. So that's the poetic principle. It's a constant state of flux that we're in. And then the last principle I want to share with you, which is the fifth principle. There's not necessarily an order. There are 5 principles behind appreciative inquiry, but it's called the simultaneity principle. The idea that inquiry and change happen simultaneously. The act of asking questions begins the change process. So where we're going to focus today is a little bit on the power of our questions and how we can use some of these, I would say the science and the research of appreciative inquiry to formulate transformational interviews and questions. So let's try this out. Firstly, let me just pause here and see if there are any questions. You know, I think the easiest for a question is if you just open up your mic and ask the question. Feel free to do that at any point. But what I thought we could do here is, you know, let's start with a question that we sometimes have for different reasons. Why do I still have that problem? Maybe at the first of the year, I said, okay, I'm going to meditate, you know, for 5 minutes every morning, but I don't do it. Or so you can think of any kind of issue that you had where you say, oh, why do I still have that problem? Now, not a bad question, but appreciative inquiry would say, you know what? Since questions are so powerful, how might you, Mohit, reframe that question? If you really want to meditate 5 minutes every morning and you set yourself that as a goal, but you're not doing it, why do I still have that problem of not doing it is not the best question. Ask yourself a solution-based question. Ask yourself a question that has you focus on the result that you want. Your questions can be transformational. So why don't we try this out just in the text box here? How might you transform this question, why do I still have that problem, to an appreciative question that's solutions focused, that has a future image of where you want to be, where the words focus not on the problem, because otherwise the problem grows, but you want to put the focus on where you want to be, on the solution, because you want that to grow. So let's try it out. How might you transform that? Love it, love it. I'll just pick one. Again, they're going by, but Jennifer, you wrote, what does a day that starts with meditation look like, right? So you're actually putting yourself, that question has opened up a new world for me, right? It makes me think, wow, what would I feel like if I had meditated? It takes me to that place, and then it becomes my new reality, right? And so our questions do open up new worlds. I love a number of these that came up. I just picked one. You know, some examples that I think had that emphasis is what possibilities that I have not yet thought about, so solutions focused. What's the smallest change I could make that could have the biggest impact? What's coming in the way of a breakthrough? But I actually prefer some of your transformations of these questions to these options here. So remember, by the way, this also relates to leadership. You know, leadership and leading is influencing. The biggest tool we have for influencing people and systems are the questions we ask. And so thoughtful questions that have this solutions focus can really be transformational. I heard, again, a lot of, Albert Einstein stories, but I heard that his theory of relativity started with the question, what would, I think he asked the question, you know, if I was on a broom and I was traveling at the speed of light and I was looking back at the clock, you know, the clock wouldn't change time, because by the time the photons of light are reaching me, I'm traveling just as fast. And that puzzle around that question got him to think about the relationship between motion and time. So I want to now bring this back from relativity to a much more practical example. I want to share with you a short video. It's from two authors, Chip and Dan Heath. Some of you may know about their research, but the video is called Focusing on Bright Spots. And after watching this short video, I'm going to suggest our first breakout group where we get to kind of discuss what this might look like in practice, okay? So what I'm going to do now is just stop sharing this screen, start sharing. Now I can see everyone, by the way, gallery view, or a lot of people. And then I'm going to share screen, go to QuickTime Player, and this is where I'm going to hope for a little luck. Tech, please work. Start. The sound starts in about 10 seconds. And I'll play it till about 2 minutes 20.
So let's say your kid comes home one day and shows you a report card that looks a little something like this. Anything jump out at you? Well, if you're like most parents, really all you see when you look at this is this. This is a thought experiment from the author Marcus Buckingham. And I think what it shows us is that we all tend to focus on problems rather than strengths. So it would be the rare parent indeed that would look at this report card and say, wow, honey, you've got such a strength in English. How can we make more of that? We all use our powers of analysis primarily to study what isn't working, rather than to study what is working. So think about all the times in your lives when you've been on phone calls with friends and they've been agonizing about the problems in their relationships, you know, and the many, many flaws of their partners. But have you ever been on a single call where the person was obsessing about why things were working so well, with an eye towards doing more of that in the future? Or as parents, you know, we really want to get to the bottom of why our kids got an F, you know, so we can correct it. But we don't obsess about why our kids got an A. What were they doing differently in that class than in the others? You know, most of the time, this problem-solving focus serves us very well. If you're a manager and things are working pretty well across the board, except for one trouble spot, by all means, solve that problem. But there's one situation in life where this backfires on us, and that's in times of change. Because in times of change, our report cards don't look near flawless. Our report cards look pretty mixed. There's a lot of stuff that's not working very well. There's a lot of stuff that may be failing outright. And if we allow ourselves to slip into problem-solving focus in that time, you know, that's a recipe for inaction, for paralysis. There's simply too many problems to be solved. In times of change, what we need to do instead is to focus on the bright spots, the early glimmers that something is working right. And once we find those bright spots, our mission is to study them and to clone them. So let's say at work, you started a new sales process 6 months ago, and the results so far have been a little bit mixed. You know, you've had 2 reps that have doubled their sales.
Okay, so that's about as much as I wanted you to watch. And so now what I'm going to ask is, let me share with you the question I have, and then we'll break into these breakout rooms. So the question I have is, informed by appreciative inquiry, what questions could you ask a student who had a mix of grades with some high grades and one very low grade? Okay, so this is the way we're going to do this, Beta. Not Beta, sorry, Luciana, I'm going to ask you if we can break into rooms of 3 people. And I'm going to give you about 5 minutes in your breakout session. So the first thing is, please take 30 seconds to kind of say hello, introduce yourself, and then get into, okay, you know, so we're looking at appreciative inquiry, what's standing out to you? And then this is the scenario. You've got a student who has this one F, this one kind of problem grade, but then they've also got areas where they're doing really well. How might you shift the focus from trying to tackle the problem to really understanding what is motivating them and what's working so well in those courses they're doing A's, and how might that be a different approach to get to kind of the problem area, right? That's what appreciative inquiry is about. So 3 things that you'll do in the next 6 minutes with your group is quick intro, why you in the session, and then tackle this question and anything else that stood out for you in the last 20 minutes. Sounds good? All right, everyone's still alive. You know, one of the facilitation techniques they talk about is when to bring back breakout rooms is when the buzz in the room starts coming down, right? That's when you come back together. So I didn't have the benefit of listening to the buzz in the room, but I hope it felt a little bit longer than last time. And great. So, you know, we have a couple of minutes left. Let me open it up again to comments, questions. I see someone in the text box. Principle number 3. So the third one, the third one that I shared was the anticipatory principle. Images of the future affect the way we behave in the present. Recently, I was reading something about people are not saving enough for retirement, and so there's this app that was produced by I think one of the finance companies, where it shows you a picture of your future self, so it ages you. So when you start connecting with your future self, apparently people save more for their return. So it's literally the images of yourself in the future make you think, oh yeah, maybe I should look after Mohit as a 65-year-old more. So again, a lot of this comes from the field of positive psychology, but then is being used by organizations, by teams to really bring out human potential. Other questions or comments?
Mohit, sorry, question here from Christina at Nzinguyu.
Yeah.
So we use a lot of this. We do leadership development. We use a lot of this, but I think I do a lot of hiring. And I focus on that. And that's where I kind of struggle, because if you always focus on their strengths, like everybody always wants to talk about how great they are in an interview,
right.
But if you don't learn kind of where people's weaknesses are, sometimes you think you're hiring someone and they're so amazing, and then they come in and then they can't do half the work that you expected, or they're slow, they don't communicate, blah, blah, blah. So is there a space, like how do you pull that out, you know, using AI and really try to understand the whole depth of a person and not just like what they're wonderful at?
Yeah. So you know, and this is a huge topic, but I'll give you my kind of 1 minute. So I do think of hiring as a good fit between the strengths a person has and the needs of a job, right? So if you have people, let's say you only had asking questions, tell me stories about times when you were the best, when you felt in flow, tell me about relationships that really energize you, tell me about things that give you meaning and purpose, you know. So if you ask them questions about all the high points of life, relationships, purpose, strengths, and you see that none of the stories they told you had things about getting stuff done or had anything to do with detail. You know, you get a clue of what energizes them, and then you can get a sense of if it's a good fit for the job. The other thing in hiring, I think, again, the whole idea here is we're all exceptions, we're all unique, we all want to have voice. So some people, when they're not a good fit for the job, it doesn't work out. So can you actually, in that interview, have them do stuff, you know, and where you get a sense of like, what are the real strengths of this person? And sometimes it's done in interviews even surreptitiously, right? Like you take them out to a restaurant, you see how they interact with people, and or you drop something and see, you know. So I do feel interviews where you just ask questions are somewhat limited. But even then you can see what energizes them, what stories are they telling, and why aren't they telling this story that the other candidate said. Yeah, but it is a good question, and it is, I think we're often limited. We have 10 candidates one day. How are we possibly going to get a full picture of each one of them? And so we often make bad hiring decisions, which are costly to everybody. Yeah. You know what, I've got my eye on time, so let me do this. I'm going to just kind of close out here. I'll share screen because there's this quote that I want to share with you that I love. And I think it really captures. So let's see, are you seeing it full screen again? You're seeing it good? Okay, so yeah, the quote I wanted to share with you, it's so David Cooper-Ryder interviewed Peter Drucker late in Peter Drucker's life. And, you know, Peter Drucker passed away a few years ago, but really, I would say a leadership guru. And he said, and I think this quote really struck me when it was first shared with me about 10 years ago. He said, the task of leadership is to create an alignment of strengths that makes a system's weaknesses irrelevant. The task of leadership is to create an alignment of strengths that makes a system's weaknesses irrelevant. So really, it's all about developing that appreciative eye, that ability to inquire and look at people's strengths, hire them for their strengths, but place them in the right position on the team. So if they, you know, let's not try to develop their weaknesses. Let's have somebody else kind of fill in on their weaknesses. So it's a leader who can, I think Stephen Covey said, leadership is about communicating to people their self-worth so clearly that they come to see it in themselves. So I think appreciative inquiry is about seeing your own strengths and putting yourself in places where you can play to your strengths, and then being able to see other strengths and kind of building those strengths-based teams and organizations. So I wanted to kind of end with this, and of course an invitation to stay connected. The hour, at least for me, flew by. And this is the work I do at the University for Peace. We do this in person on campus. We host university groups. We have an online diploma in social innovation. All of them have incorporated appreciative inquiry as kind of a cross-cutting theme. It's and so thank you for joining this morning. I think it was the first session of the Ashoka U. So now you can. I know there's other sessions, virtual coffee. I'm also doing these virtual kind of Zoom hangouts. So please reach out and connect, and wish we were, this is so much better than not doing the Ashoka U, but still would much rather be in the same room as you. So at least for now, as I'm still getting familiar with all of this. Thank you everyone. Thank you, Luciana.
Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.